Goth, Fetish and BDSM. In today's video, I'm going to talk about what they are and how they are related to each other. However, if you don't keep on watching this video and you take away only one thing from this video, remember that respect and consent are always important, regardless of whether a person is into fetish, BDSM or goth or not. It's common decency, but apparently some people need to be reminded of this. So that's why I'm saying this in the start of this video. It's kind of similar like my video on how to talk to goth girls. A lot of people replied, well, this is just a normal way to talk to women. Well, apparently that's what people need to know, because apparently they don't see goth people as just normal people. Hello spooky bats and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, hi and welcome. My name is Orphea and I'm a goth YouTuber from Belgium. In today's video, I want to talk about goth, fetish and BDSM. To get this video started, I want to start with a few definitions, so we have a very good basic understanding about what these things actually are. Let's start with the definition of goth. Goth is a subculture that began in the UK during the 1980s. It was developed by fans of gothic rock, an offshoot of the post-punk music genre. The name goth was derived directly from the genre. Notable post-punk artists who presaged the goth rock genre and helped develop and shape the subculture include Siouxsie and the Banshees, Bauhaus, The Cure and Joy Division. The goth subculture has survived much longer than others of the same era and has continued to diversify and spread throughout the world. Its imagery and cultural proclivities indicate influences from the 19th century gothic fiction and horror films. The scene is centered on music festivals, nightclubs and organized meetings, especially in Western Europe. The subculture has associated tastes in music, aesthetics and fashion. The music preferred by goth includes a number of styles such as goth rock, death rock, cold wave, dark wave and ethereal wave. Styles of dress within the subculture draw on punk, new wave and new romantic fashion. It also draws from the fashion of earlier periods such as the Victorian, Edwardian and Belle Epoque eras. The style most often includes dark, usually solid black attire, dark makeup and dark hair. The subculture has continued to draw interest from a large audience decades after its emergence. Put into simple terms, the goth subculture is a music-based subculture where dark attire is often associated with and actually largely represented in the subculture. Up next, let's look at the definition of fetish. Fetish, a form of sexual desire in which gratification is linked to an abnormal degree, to a particular object, item of clothing, part of the body, etc. So what actually can be a fetish? Well, anything can be a fetish. And then of course we still need the definition of BDSM. BDSM, bondage, discipline or domination, sadism or submission, masochism. Sexual activity that involves, for example, tying a partner up, games in which one partner controls another, or giving and receiving pain for pleasure. One of the main things in BDSM is actually respect and consent. And I think it should be like that everywhere, but especially within the BDSM community, that is extremely important. Because without consent, sexual activities become rape. Without consent and respect, BDSM activities become abuse, and that's not okay. It never is. So both fetish and BDSM are actually sexual practices. So why are they linked to the goth subculture? Well, because some of the fetishes that are mostly known are actually worn by people in the goth subculture. The most common fetish is a foot fetish. And associated to the foot fetish come heels, come high heels, come platform boots, comes also stepping onto each other, come tights, come fishnets, etc. All things who are very commonly worn by goths. And therefore, some people associate goth with fetish, which is something they shouldn't do, because literally anything could be a fetish. Someone could have a fetish for sneakers, which isn't uncommon actually. Or you could have a fetish for people in tight jeans. Those things are not associated with the goth subculture, however they are fetishes. So it's very wrong for people to assume that goth is based on fetishes solely, because it's definitely not the case. When we get into BDSM influences on the goth subculture, there's a lot of crossover. And I know for some people it can make it rather difficult to tie that line between what is sexual and what isn't. And for this example, I want to include a few songs that I'm of course not going to be able to actually include in this video, but I will be linking them down below so you can go and have a listen. So now let's look at some songs by bands that are definitely goth. Bauhaus, the song Lagartija Nick. One of the parts of the song goes, "Cracks the whip, come on crack the whip." I mean, can it be any more obvious? There's also the song Venus in Furs by the Velvet Underground. Kiss the boot of shiny leather in the dark. Tongue of tongues, the belt that does await you. Strike, dear mistress, and cure this heart. I mean, this all comes down to the fetish of the boots and then also the submissive part of the person that is talking and of course the mistress who has the dominant role. This song needs no further explanation. Fields of the Nephilim, Submission. Another song that is heavily influenced by BDSM is Siouxsie and the Banshees, Melt. And now let's get into some recent club songs that are being played quite frequently in goth clubs that I personally attend. One of them is of course Depeche Mode's Master and Servant. Then you have Combi Christ, Get Your Body Beat. Boy Harsher's Pain is also one of them. Now this is of course no way of saying that the normal regular pop culture doesn't use BDSM or fetishes in their music. Rihanna's song S&M is like a literal reference to BDSM. Sticks and stones won't break my bones, but chains and whips excite me. I mean, that's also very obvious. However, in that video, she wears clothing that is also fetish and BDSM inspired. And it looks an awful lot like goth clothing you see very often. Now, there is also a specific subculture within the subculture, which is called fetish goth. And the definition of fetish goth is an aesthetic combination of BDSM gear and goth fashion, such as latex, fishnets, and colors. But what is very important to note is that you do not have to be into fetish or BDSM in order to be able to wear it. Just like everything, fashion is fashion. Fashion is the clothes you put on your body. And it's not because you wear certain clothes that you should immediately be associated with certain sexual activities, because that's just wrong. And this is yet again the common decency that I think a lot of people do have, or should have at least, but some people don't clearly, is to know when it is fashion and to know when it is appropriate to talk about sex or sexual activities. It's not okay to just randomly talk to a stranger on the internet about it. You have no idea. The DMs that I sometimes get onto my account, and I don't even interact with those people, I immediately report and block them. As a woman on the internet, you are target of this, regardless if you have an alternative account or not. And trust me, I know, because I have a second account, which is a business account, on which I have no relation to God at all. No sexual pictures, no daring outfits, no nothing. And even there I get messages of men who are interested in doing all sorts of fun stuff for them with me. Which is not something that you do. Which is not something that someone who has an actual actively working brain would do. Don't talk to people about these things unless they consent to it. And if they say no, have respect and respect that no. Now, I personally live in Belgium, so I'm also going to talk about my experience in the real world, in the outside world, like walking around, going to festivals, going to parties. I have so far only been catcalled, but I get catcalled in regular clothes, in god clothes, in anything, and I usually just ignore it. I have never ever, so far at least, been approached by someone who clearly asks me to do certain things with them and not accepted a no. So the people, if I say no to them, they just go away. The thing is also that I'm not sure how it relates to the cultures here and somewhere else. For example, I know that in America, this is a lot more frequent than in Europe, for example. I don't know how this exists, how this goes, but here in Europe, people are a lot more toned down. People keep their opinions a lot more to themselves, and people don't usually make the first step to start talking to someone else, except online. Online, that's a different story. Online, you might get a lot of messages. However, in real life, in the outside world, this happens a lot less frequently. And please remember, if you're getting messages online, if you're being talked to in the street by creeps, asking you things that are really not okay, that are not commonly asked on the first questions, know that they are the problem. Not you, those people are the problem. They need to learn the difference between what is okay to tell to a person and what isn't, or what is okay to assume about a person and what isn't. Basically, assume nothing and don't ask those questions. I'm not going to go to just a random person on the street and ask them to have sex with me. That's not something that I would ever do. That's not something that anyone in their right minds would ever do. However, some people think it's okay to do that, and that's something that I just really don't understand. Where have they been? Have they been to school? Have they been educated? Have they been living in an actual family with people who give them values? Because that's something that I feel for those people who make those comments, who talk that way, is really missing. Do they really have no self-worth? And that's another issue, but that's not what I'm making this video about today. Today's video is about the relationship between fetish, goth, and BDSM, what it is, what it isn't. You can never assume that someone is into BDSM or into fetish, regardless if they are goth or not. And of course, I also need to mention the online use of the hashtag goth by sex workers who are or aren't goth. Is it okay that they associate themselves with goth subculture or not? Well, yes and no, and that's an entirely different discussion that I'm not going to have today. This video is already long enough. I don't feel like people who dress up as goth just for one picture should be really associating themselves with the goth subculture. However, the tag goth has been appropriated also by a fashion style that is widely known nowadays. If you look up goth, the most things that you will find are related to the fashion and not to the music. Because a lot of people don't even know what the goth subculture actually is, because they only see the fashion side of it and they don't see the music side of it, which is a big shame. But again, that's a totally different discussion. It's the behavior of the people who treat every single person who uses the hashtag goth as a sex worker that is an issue. There is a very big difference between a post by a goth who just wants to show off her outfit and a post of someone who's a sex worker who actually wants interaction because of that outfit. You will see it in the caption, you will see it in the comments, you will see it in the other posts on the profile. And if I post pictures, I also get comments that are like hot or whatever with flames. That's okay, I don't mind those. But it is not okay for people to slide into your DMs and to ask if you want to be their mistress. That is not okay. For no one, also not for the sex workers, also not for anyone. And that's the main thing. Respect should be common sense and you should look into things before assuming. But again, common sense is something that some people are really missing nowadays, and that's the reason why I have to make these videos and explain myself about things that should be very obvious. And of course, there are goths who are interested in fetish and into BDSM, but most of them don't post about it online or use specific platforms to post about that online. They won't post it on their Instagram, and if they do, well, that's up to them. And that's okay, because we're all different. Every single person on this planet is different. Whether you are goth or not doesn't define whether you're into fetish and BDSM. You could be a hippie who loves BDSM. You could be any type of person and be into fetish or BDSM, and that's completely normal. Not every single person is the same. I hope that you enjoyed this video, that it gave you some insights into the goth subculture, what it is, what it isn't. If you did, give this video a big thumbs up. Of course, feel free to let me know in the comments what is your opinion on this, because I would love to have an open discussion with all of you. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I make new videos every week and I would love to have you for every single one of them. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week with a new one. Bye!